So that means that when I have challenges and adversities, I have these like 24 tools in my toolbox in a way that I could use. And I could, if I'm stuck somewhere, then maybe I could sort of look at a different way that I could do it, So maybe if love can get me through something that's hard, maybe I could use, gratitude, or maybe I could use perseverance, or maybe I could use self-regulation, which is, being disciplined.
Welcome to New World Normal, the podcast, where every week we'll talk to guest experts, thought leaders, and everyday people who are disrupting norms and working to create a more inclusive and holistic society. We will talk about the issues that affect us all: environmental, human rights, social issues, criminal justice, education, and the economy. We'll talk about wellness and about food, from how it's cultivated and distributed to how it's prepared and consumed. Basically, we talk about all the systems in our society that aren't necessarily working for the benefit of the many. We'll strategize and collaborate on how we, as a collective, can intentionally make better choices every day that will lead to positive changes in the world around us. If that sounds good to you, stick around and have a listen. And by all means, click like or follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast source. Welcome back. I'm Debbie Harrell. And today our guest is Marjorie Aunos. Marjorie has a Ph.D. in psychology and is an award-winning inspirational speaker, an author, and researcher from Montreal, Canada. Her expertise is working with parents who have intellectual disabilities. Marjorie believes that by focusing on our strengths of character, which we've decided to call superpowers, we can all live truly fulfilling lives. We're talking about her story that starts at age 18 when she first heard her calling to help people with disabilities, and takes a few not-so-normal plot twists, but her passion for her work and her love for her family remains steadfast. I really hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I enjoyed speaking with Marjorie. Hello, everybody. Today we're here with Marjorie Aunos, who is a psychologist and a mom on wheels. She's going to share a little bit about her story and how it is affecting a more inclusive and holistic society. How are you today, Marjorie?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Great. I'm really excited, actually, to be talking to you about sort of inclusion. It's something that's always been dear to my heart. So it's nice.
It is interesting. The more I'm learning about how, because I always assumed I was a very inclusive person, but because we live in our bubbles, a lot of times we don't even realize the areas that we're not being as inclusive. And ableism would definitely be one of those ones that just kind of flies under the radar. It doesn't really get a lot of attention, or the attention that it might deserve. And you have experience in lots of different facets where you were starting in your career as an advocate for parents that have disabilities, and you would advocate for them in their parenthood. So do you want to start there talking about that work?
Yes.
Okay.
That'd be great.
We'll tease them that there's something else coming.
That's right. Yeah. I think I was about 18 when I met the first mom who has an intellectual disabilities, like in my life. I was supporting her daughter in camp, and people were saying, "Oh, you should meet mom. You'll have a larger context of how you could support the daughter." And so I met Julie. It's not her real name, but I use that name for her. So I met Julie, and I realized she had an intellectual disability like her daughter did. And I became fascinated at how resilient and powerful this mom was. She was struggling yet hustling, and trying to do it all to really sort of stand out an amazing image of what motherhood is and what she needs to do to take care of her children. And so from that moment on, I knew that I wanted to work in that field. It was definitely my purpose, and that was my calling moment. And that was very powerful. And so I studied in psychology and made sure that I got one of the international experts to supervise my thesis, my PhD in that field. And so I did research and I met 50 moms in my region in Quebec, in the province where I live in Canada. And then I worked clinically with moms who have an intellectual disabilities. And it was just fantastic. But one of the things that was very hard was most of them, if not all of them, had stories of discrimination and stigma and preconceived notions of, their ability to parent. And so that turned me from a psychologist who would offer support to often being a psychologist that advocates for their rights in court, in child welfare sittings.
Parenting is challenging when you have all of your faculties. So to do it from a place where you have challenges would be even more difficult. The preconceived notions and the stereotyping and the assumptions that just because somebody might have lesser faculties in certain areas, then they wouldn't be fit as a parent. Mm-hmm. I live in a resort town, so it's very hospitality based, and we see lots of people coming and going. And I was talking to someone that had an issue with a parent, and they were concerned for the child. And it was right after I had read your interest in being on the show. And the parent was having the child help them, whether it was count money or find something in their purse. Yeah. And the assumption that was made by the worker might have been an assumption that I had made had I not just read what you did. And I was like, well, because that parent, maybe that person has a sight issue where they just can't see that well. Or maybe they have a cognitive issue where math is just not something that they do easily and their child is helping them. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. As parents, we all ask our children for help from time to time. So just to have that little shift in awareness was huge. And that's why I was excited to have you come on, because I'm sure there are many other people that would go through their day making assumptions like that about people because there's not having an awareness that, oh yes, people that have intellectual disabilities or other disabilities have children also. That doesn't mean they're not fit to be a parent. They just have to navigate a little differently than we all do from time to time.
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned their resilience. Another thing that I was looking forward to talking to you about is your resilience. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, what happened is that I had been working 15 years in my field. So as a psychologist, I even became a manager of a program to support moms who have an intellectual disabilities. And I say mom, but I should say just parents, because, we're inclusive, right? And there are dads and there are people that don't identify female and or male. So I had been working 15 years in the field. I had decided that, you talked about normalcy. Normally we have children, it's a couple, it's a male and a female. Well, in my case, I decided to have a kid on my own. I figured that was my normal for me, was to have a kid on my own. So I became a single mom by choice when I was about 33. And when my son was about 16 months old, I was going back to work after the holidays. And I got in a car accident. And the car accident was significant enough or severe enough that I actually thought I was going to die. I don't know, I thought of my son right before the impact with the truck in front of me. And I asked to live because I knew that I was his only parent. So I needed to be there for him. And so that's what happened. I lost consciousness and I woke up. And when I woke up in the car, I knew right away that something really wrong had happened, because my legs felt like numb and with, like pins and needles going through them. When I woke up, I even, couldn't feel or move my arms, which freaked me out. And then I was like, oh shit, like I asked to live for my son, but I need, it means I asked to live like before, like normal where you could walk and like move your arms and hold the people you love. And, I said a prayer or two and got, movement back in my arms. But basically everything else was disconnected. So I sustained a spinal cord injury in my accident and became paraplegic right there. And basically anything that's below my armpit, I don't feel, or I can't move. There's no motor functions. And so for me, it was an interesting twist in my story, because for 15 years, I had been advocating for parents who have an intellectual disabilities to be able to parent. And now I was in a situation where I potentially was now in the position where I needed to advocate for myself and for my son as a parent who has a physical disability.
My first thought is to choose to become a parent as a single mom is courageous. And so it speaks to your character and your courage and ability to step outside of the norm and like, this is what I want and I'm capable and I'm going to do it and go for it. How do you see that your courage and determination played into the rest of your story? Because that is huge to have a 16-month-old child and now you have lost the ability to walk.
Yes. So the first thing that I wanted to say when you were asking the question is becoming a single mom by choice. For me, I knew I could do it because I had seen these women for 15 years do it. And these women who had less resources than me. And so for me, it was sort of like, hey, you know what? It's feasible. We do it all the time. And on top of that, I have like an amazing support network. So I rallied everyone before I started the process via insemination. I rallied everybody. My girlfriends knew, my parents. I went to talk to my dad, who had been raised by a single parent. So it was sort of like, I'm going to set this up. I'm going to get everyone on board. And so basically single motherhood was sort of like, it's the village that's, supporting the whole endeavor. So it wasn't very scary because I had all of this and because I had seen it done with moms who sometimes don't even have like a tenth of the support that I had or the financial means, because they're all under, the poverty line for most of them. So that's the first thing that I wanted to react to, which to me, that wasn't a big leap because of like my job and what I had been doing for this long. And then you talked about sort of courage, and I heard you talk about grit, and I heard you talk about stubbornness. And the irony is that, yes, I do have a lot of grit. It's even on my wall.
Oh, there it is. Look at that.
Yes, my inspiration wall. And under, you can't see it maybe, but it says perseverance. Those were strengths that were part of me before my accident. Doing a Ph.D. Is something that takes a lot of grit because you want to give up, very often in different, steps of the process. Actually, about a week ago, I did a speech on grit, and I was talking about how, when people said to me, well, are you sure? Do you really want to become like a single mom? And I was like, oh, watch me. That was like the little voice in my head that used to say that. And then you talked about stubbornness. And I also reflected on that in a piece in CBC. And I wrote something about that. And the title says, if it wasn't for my stubbornness, my son and I would often be left behind. And the image that I wanted to show people is exactly that if I wasn't this like go-getter and like, oh my God, you said I can't, I'm going to prove you I can type of attitude, I would have been, not allowed in arenas or on soccer fields or in some of the schools or, educational facilities that my son went to, Because you know what? A lot of them are not adapted, or when they are adapted, so you'll have two places, for a car of handicapped person to park there. But in the winter, that's so easy to put all the snow there, right? So you shovel the snow of the whole parking lot and you put it where the handicap parking is, right? Apparently that's what, some Canadians do.
Oh my goodness.
Or you'll have sort of the ramp, but the ramp, they didn't put salt on it. And wintertime, it's lovely to luge, backwards on your wheelchair because you're sliding on the ramp. So there's many, many different images and situations where I was with my son trying to go places that parents and kids go to, but I was faced with discrimination in a way because it wasn't accessible for me, because I was on wheels. And that was very frustrating. And certainly, like in terms of adapting to my situation, it wasn't so much me adapting. The difficulty was definitely, facing the non-adaptation of society, because we don't think that people with disability can parent. So we don't really think about these things.
Well, and I think too, how challenging that must have been and disappointing for your son at times if he couldn't have you with him in certain places.
Yeah, that was very hard. There's a story that I often tell. One weekend we decided to go to Quebec City, and my mom came with us. So we were good. So, and we were visiting some friends. So we spent like the whole day in Quebec City, which, by the way, is not very accessible. It has still like gobblestones in the old town. So gobblestones and wheelchair, they don't really like each other. It's like going on roller coasters.
Right. That would be challenging for sure.
Yeah. So we're in Quebec City and, we get to our hotel room. It's like past 10 o'clock at night. So we're quite tired. And, it's an adapted room. It was advertised that way. So we go to the room and nothing is adapted. Oh my God. It was just like the toilet was too high. The bath, I can't even get in on the bath. The sink, I couldn't put my legs under, so I couldn't wash my hands properly, or I needed to position myself differently. There was carpet. The doors were too heavy. And then there was the situation of the bed. So the bed was in a corner, and because it was in a corner, I couldn't get to the bed, to the head of the bed. So I had to be at the feet, which meant that I then needed to sort of crawl to the end of the bed. But that wasn't the worst. The worst was that the bed was so high, I actually could not get in on my own. So you have to imagine the scene. I'm at the feet of the bed, trying to lift my ass with only my two arms, while my mom picks up my legs to try to give me a lift, while I have my 8-year-old son in back of me, trying to lift sort of the upper body and give me a push as I'm pushing with my arms. It was ridiculous. Now, because it was 10 o'clock and we were tired, I said nothing, but I was fuming. Right? How could they, if I hadn't had my son and my mom, I needed more than just my mom that time around. And that was the most frustrating, because I felt like it's not my son's job to carry me into bed at 8 years old. That's not how, I see parenting. Anyways, we're having breakfast the next morning, and it's my son who says, "Mom," and he's 8, and my son is a very shy boy. And he says, "Mom, I think I want to talk to the manager." I said, "Oh, okay. You want to talk to the manager? Why do you want to talk to the manager?" He says, "Oh, I have a few things that I need to say." So I go, "No problem." So we get the manager, and I have my 8-year-old son who says basically to this manager, "Because you advertise for an adapted room, we thought that we could do it. But that if we hadn't had many with us, what would have happened? This prevents me to do things with just my mom. I always need to have another adult, not because my mom is not capable, but because people like you advertised for things that are adapted and they are not. And so basically, I have my 8-year-old son who had seen me advocate for myself many times, sort of advocating for our family and sort of saying, hey, it's unfair. And, being in a wheelchair doesn't make me incapable. It's the non-accessibility of things that do.
I now have tears in my eyes and goosebumps, because that was what I was thinking as you were saying, this isn't my son's job to help me into bed like this. And I can see that as a parent, we don't want them feeling like they need to take on more than their age.
That's right.
But my first thought was, what a compassionate young man he's probably growing into. And you proved that point by that speech he gave the manager.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. I mean, how old is he now?
He's 11.
11.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like those challenges that we don't want them to have are still shaping them. And it seems like in this case, will definitely be shaping him to be more compassionate with the people in his family and the people in the world around him, because he's grown up in a different way.
Yeah, it's certainly, which is, it was hard for me to adjust. I was, as we said, a go-getter. And so being limited, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, but certainly, like, I felt like I couldn't be as fast as before. I can't take on as many projects as I used to, because, I have to take care of my physical needs, which are, have increased because I'm in a wheelchair. So I had to learn to adapt to that sort of rhythm of life and slow down and be, more mindful, and be sort of learn to be less reactive of things, because then it sort of triggers a whole bunch of different, physical ailments. So when I'm stressed, I have more spasms in my legs, and that could lead to, greater falls, or I'll get tensed up and right away my neck and my shoulders create a lot of pain, which triggers into tension headaches that are incredible. And I'm saying all of that because, in a way, my accident and me becoming a person with a disability has taught even me and my son about slowing down, savoring the moment, being mindful of what is around us, appreciating things. And so when you were talking about my son developing compassion because he's, sort of being raised by a person that's different, definitely. And there's so many other strengths that he has developed that I really do believe my situation shaped, or influenced him in developing. And all those, qualities that I just mentioned are, in the bag that he has because we had to adjust. And the mindfulness, we had to adjust like everybody, COVID happened.
That's what I was just going to say, that big pause and slowdown that you had before, we all got to experience. And I feel like a lot of people took the same gifts that you did from it, like the slowing down, the being more mindful and less reactive, because we had no control over a lot of what was going on. We had to learn how to adapt. And it parallels your story in a, a broad sense. Definitely not, our hardship was not anywhere compared to what yours was and what you had to adapt to, and the resiliency you showed, and your son to grow up not having to help, but I'm sure he wants to help as much as he can.
That is true. In the same time, I will say, my parenting or my situation definitely shaped him to be, a very compassionate young boy. In the same time, he's still an 11-year-old boy. So even though he knows that anything that's on the floor is not great for my wheels, he will leave all his clothes on the floor, not in the basket, right?
He's going to be a kid. and push your
He
buttons.
is yes. And in the morning, when he has to go to school very early, now I'm thankful because my mom is the one who does the driving to facilitate sort of like my getting up and stuff. But, he needs to leave for school like at 7:15 in the morning. I mean, he still, make sure that I'm required to pour him his bowl of cereal. It has to be me. Which is fine because, I see it also as sort of like the parenting role and so forth. But it's very interesting how, even though he's quite capable, I mean, with me being in a wheelchair, Thomas learned to, pour cereal into a bowl. I think he was 3 or 4 years old, and he could do that in the morning because I wasn't quick enough to do it for him. Now that he's 11, he's requiring me to do it because it's like so much better when it's mom doing it.
It really is.
So he's great, but he's, a kid. So it's.
And you're probably happy to see that.
Yes.
Do you feel you get less frustrated than other parents with that? Because, oh, look, he's getting to be just a kid. He's not he's not feeling any extra burden. He's just like, oh, my clothes are going to go here. And
yes, now
mom can deal with it.
Yeah. No, for that, yes, and there's still, I mean, I'm not a perfect parent either. So I still get frustrated on different things and we still have our little, fights like probably most parents do with their kids. And sometimes he gives me attitude and I have to sort of reframe a little bit. And sometimes I have to tell him that was a bit rude and he has to learn that piece. And so I think that, our interactions as parent and child is quite similar than anybody else's, and that is nice for me because at the beginning when I had the accident, parenting like a 2-year-old, takes a lot of like arms and legs. It was hard, me adapting to my situation, to my new body who like didn't work the same way, who kept getting sick at the beginning, which was hard to adjust because it was sort of like, well, I'm getting sick, but I need to take care of Tama. And, for the first 6 months, I was either in the hospital or in rehab, sleeping there. So not physically there for him. So when I returned back home, when he wanted a glass of milk, he was asking my mom, not me, because Mammy had been there for him for 6 months. And she was the one getting up when he would wake up at nighttime because I wasn't there. And then when I moved back in, my house wasn't adapted for 18 more months. And so going up the stairs, I couldn't do that. So my mom would be the one picking him up in the night, bringing him downstairs to my bed so I could comfort him. And when he would be comforted, she would take him back and bring him back upstairs. And we did that dance, for quite a while with my parents, where we learned to be a team. And basically my mom learned to be a bit sort of like my arms and legs when I needed to. Giving bath time, I was in the bathroom. I would tell my mom, now I think you need to wash his head, or, just, a little bit more bubbles, Mommy, you should do this or do that. And she would follow my cues. And Tama would know that it was sort of me handling the bath time, even though I wasn't the one who could do it because I didn't have the balance of my trunk. Like, imagine not having your abs to sort of keep you in place. And then imagine like a wet, soapy kid, it doesn't, like, it's a bit unsafe. So my mom did that for me. And that was hard because not only I needed to adapt to my new sort of physicality, but then I had to sort of understand that this was parenting, even though I wasn't physically doing the act of it.
I was going to say, I'm struck by the beautiful balance that you seem to find, because so many people might have just been, it's just easy for Mammy to do it. So should you call it grandma?
Yeah, exactly.
For your mom just to take over and do it in all aspects. But the fact that she brought him to you to comfort in the middle of the night, it's huge, because she was letting you still be the mom. You were still getting to mom in the capacity that you were able to. As challenging as I imagine that was for you, to not just be able to do it all, to still have the support to do as much as you were able to do is lovely.
My mom gave me the most beautiful gift, right? She knew that I had survived the car accident because of my love for Thomas. Because as soon as I woke up, that's the first thing I said. When people said, "Oh, do you know where you are and what happened?" And I would say, "Yeah, I was in a car accident. I was about to die, but I didn't because I love my son." And the first 5 days in the hospital, I refused to see Thomas because I was like hooked up on different things. There was a lot of machines. It's a foreign environment, not one that you want to be in. And so I knew he would get scared. So I didn't want, and I didn't realize that it would be longer than a week, right? I thought maybe in a week I'll be back home. But every day I would wake up. I was in and out of consciousness for those 5 days. And every time I would wake up, I would cry. And I would say, like, what's happening to my life? I should have died or stayed in that car. It would have been better for everybody. And so my nurse, who was taking care of me at the hospital, said to my mom, don't listen to what she said. You need to bring her son right now. She's getting so depressed. She won't be able to go back up. She needs to be reminded of why she survived. And you need to make sure that she sees, even though, whatever the reaction of Thomas will be. And so my mom brought my son, and when Thomas saw me, he got scared. He was in my mom's arms, and he tried to crawl, over past her shoulder, like to get out of there because it was so scary. And because I couldn't move, I was hooked. I couldn't even try to grab him or try to comfort him. It was a big mess. Everybody was crying. It was like horrible. I told my mom, get him out of here. It's traumatizing him. You need to take care of him. He's the priority. I'm second. And so she took him out. My dad took care of him. And then she came back and she said, from now on, every single day, I will bring him to you until he is reminded that you are his mom and you are here for him. And she did that with my dad every single day. Every single day of those 6 months, I saw my son after his nap. And that was just beautiful. And that is definitely like the most beautiful gift anyone has given me, because she didn't try to take my place. She knew how important becoming a mom was. I became a mom on my own because I felt that strongly about becoming a mother. And so, she saw her role really as supporting me and making sure that connection between my son and I stays intact. And I could say now, with Thomas being 11 years old, parenting is not as physical as before. And so she's still there in periphery, and she's grandma, but if I'm able to say that I'm Thomas' mom, and if I'm able to see Thomas sort of come to me when he has issues, or when he doesn't understand his homework, when he wants an extra apple and doesn't want to get up to go and pick it up, it's me he asks for. So, and that's a gift that my mom gave me.
That's great. It's nice to see it come full circle like that. And one thing I was struck by, the nurse saying that you needed to see your son. And what I was thinking is, it's your why. It's why you, and that's what they say is so important when you feel stuck or overwhelmed by anything, is to try and focus on your why. And that's exactly what that nurse was trying to remind you of why you decided you wanted to live for your son.
Yeah.
And as a parent, that is our why for everything.
Yep. Yeah. So powerful, incredibly powerful. I know, and I've seen it do it, because in rehab, I wasn't the only one, unfortunately. And I was one of the few parents. So I'm not saying that you can go through rehab if you're not a parent, But certainly being a parent gave me that extra motivation to do everything and to be very purposeful in the things that I wanted to learn. Because we build in rehab, they build sort of an intervention plan around what we want to do. And so for me, everything that I wanted to do revolved around my parenting tasks that I wanted to keep. And
you were parenting a toddler at the time, which is
yes,
lots of challenges.
Oh my God. I have like little words, for the, terrible 2s, terrible 3. Then there's the 4 and the 5. Yeah. It got better at 6, I'm telling you. Yeah.
That's funny. What would you say, what are some practical ways that if our listeners want to be better advocates for people with disabilities, or just to become more aware, are there any ways you see they can do that?
The one thing that I often say is, first of all, just treat us like, I'm moving on a wheelchair, but I still respond when people smile to me. I know that some people with disabilities will say, oh, don't ask me if I need help because I'm quite capable. For me, it's like, if you want to ask me if I need help, yes, please, thank you. And I will tell you if I do need help, or I'll tell you if I don't. And that's okay. But at least you ask. And sometimes it is hard, when you're in a public place to ask for help from a stranger. And so when someone offers, it sort of like gives you permission to actually take it. That's how I see it. And so for me, as long as it's done very respectfully and politely, please do ask. I will be, very happy and touched that you asked. Having said that, I do drive my car. So I go places, sometimes the doors are too heavy, especially when, that handicap button doesn't work and the door doesn't open on its own. But, it's really simple things. I don't think there's like major things. And when you see sort of parents who are in a wheelchair, for example, or with a cane or with the dog, that's there because they have vision difficulties or whatnot. I think the reflex that we need to stop to have is that disability is something that's lacking, thus making us inadequate. We are capable of functioning, capable of working, capable of parenting. And so people, when we see that we have a struggle, shouldn't assume that it's because we have a disability that the struggle is there. And to illustrate that a little bit, I have a small story about 6 months after my accident, we were in Halifax. So from Montreal, we took a plane with my dad and my mom and my child, who's 2 years old. And my parents said, because you're, attending a conference, we're going to take Tama in our bedroom. It's going to be easier that way. Well, let me tell you, it was party central in their room. And it wasn't because my parents had invited people, but it was because there was a 2-year-old just like jumping off beds and doing a whole bunch of different things because his whole routine had changed. And that little story showed me that disability has nothing to do with it, right? In that particular situation and in many situations, it really had to do with the fact that Tama was a 2-year-old, out of his routine, not understanding where he was. And so I guess, it would be that people think of that little story when they see someone, a parent with a disability, and sort of not judge, don't call child welfare on us,
That is an excellent point, because the frustrations of parenthood are probably universal across with abilities and disabilities. Sometimes it's just frustrating, especially when you have a 2-year-old bouncing off the walls.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that it's okay to ask if you need help, because I feel like that is a lot of times I'll see someone in a wheelchair and feel like, are they struggling? Like, should I offer help? Or are they going to feel insulted if I ask them? So now that you've given me permission, I'm not going to wonder anymore.
Sounds good. Perfect.
You had listed something about 24 character strengths.
Yes. Yeah. So if you don't know about positive psychology and the science behind character strength, everything that we've talked about, I've referred to them without sort of mentioning them, specifically. So this is something like, I was raising Tama, I was working, and then I got caught with a tsunami of emotion about 5 years after my accident. And I became, I felt like the whole traumatic experience, it was so hard. It was such a dark place at that point. It was sort of like I reacted emotionally 5 years later, as if, everything caught up with me at that time. And I became, in depression, and I had anxiety, and I had post-traumatic stress responses. And it was really difficult because I felt like I couldn't get out of it. And I could just, I had enough energy to be there for Tama. So I don't think Tama, nothing changed really in his lifestyle. But certainly for me, it was sort of, I was struggling. I felt like like a salmon going upstream, just pedaling and not being able to go anywhere. And that's when I found out about positive psychology. And so the science of character strength is basically a study that was done in the year 2000 or around there by a group of psychologists led by Dr. Martin Seligman, which I think is heard or known, not just in psychology world. And they basically surveyed a whole bunch of people from different cultures, countries, religions, spirituality, backgrounds, and so forth. And with that survey, they realized that there was 6 virtues that was similar that every basically human being could tap into. And out of those 6 virtues, 24 character strength. And so some of them are gratitude. Another one is appreciation of beauty and excellence, which I mentioned earlier. Grit, which is basically perseverance, with determination, is another one. Love, which is why I survived the car accident. And love for me is actually my top character strength. Because if I follow sort of the survey that they have, they being the VIA Institute, love comes up as my strongest strength, the one I use the most. And so I learned all of this. And as I was learning about these character strengths, I was able to sort of go back during my accident and sort of realize that the accident hadn't just happened to me. I wasn't powerless as I thought I was, because I used love to, survive. I used prudence, which is another character strength. In the car, when I realized that after asking for my arms back, when I realized that I could move them, I used prudence by saying to myself, now you need to stop moving, because obviously your spinal cord is touch. And, if you move, that's not I've watched enough TV shows, about firemen and first responder to know that when something happens, don't move. They'll move you. And so prudence was there. Spirituality was there because I asked God to survive, and I asked God to give me back my arms so I could hug my kid. And so even spirituality, and I say even because spirituality is actually my lesser strength, the one that I use the less. Well, in a time where I needed it, it was there for me to sort of tap into. And learning about this empowered me. I wasn't hopeless anymore. I was hopeful. It was sort of like, great. So that means that when I have challenges and adversities, I have these 24 tools in my toolbox in a way that I could use. And I could, if I'm stuck somewhere, then maybe I could sort of look at a different way that I could do it, So maybe if love can get me through something that's hard, maybe I could use, gratitude, or maybe I could use perseverance, or maybe I could use self-regulation, which is being disciplined and just like stop asking yourself too many questions, just do it type of, type of strength. And so it became like almost fun to sort of.
I was just going to say, it almost makes it like a puzzle.
Yes.
Or like one of those games. What am I going to use to solve this puzzle versus that puzzle?
Yeah.
Which strength are you going to tap into?
That's right. Exactly.
I love that. And the fact that we all have that within us.
Yeah.
To tap in.
So it's just a matter of like thinking or being creative, and creativity is another one, in terms of, how can we strengthen them so that it's easier for us to use when we need them, or just like be aware of them and be grateful that we have those, I don't want to say superpowers, but in a way sort of like,
I think they are superpowers. I think we should call them superpowers.
Yeah. That's how I refer to them for Tama, because, we're a big Avengers fan in my family. So,
okay. I love it.
Yeah.
I think that this might be a great spot to wrap up on, but we do need to talk about one more thing. You have a book?
Yes, coming out. Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm just actually reviewing the chapters as per my editor's comment. And I'm really looking forward to having the book out, because it talks about everything that we've talked about today, about how, from a professional, I became a parent with a disability, and how, basically I had to tap in to all those strengths and how they sort of shaped my view. And the book is really about sort of the lessons that I've learned. It's going to be 10 years that I've had my car accident next January. And so it's a little bit for me a way to celebrate, because after 10 years, I could say I will be celebrating on January 5th, which is pretty powerful in itself, because usually I would sort of hide my head under the cover the first few years for sure. And now I want to celebrate, because there are thousands of things that I've seen, and I've seen my son grow, and I've had experiences with my nieces and nephew and my siblings and my parents in those 10 years that I would have missed. They would have like not been part of my memory. And I want to celebrate that because it's powerful. And so that book is really about celebrating, and, sharing the lessons in a way that I've learned through it all.
I love it. Celebrating a not so normal life.
That's right. Maybe that should be the title. We haven't picked the title yet.
And I will, of course, share with everybody how to keep in touch with you so that they'll know when that book comes out. I really appreciate you talking to us today. And I have to say that you are glowing.
Oh,
quite
thank you.
Literally. I can see
yes.
from the inside, and then the way your lights shine down on you with your grit wall behind you. It's a beautiful image. Oh, love right in the middle.
Right in the middle. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it.
I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope that this gets out to the people that need to hear it. Your story definitely illustrates it very clearly, that anything is possible with the tapping into those superpowers.
Yes.
And being determined. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our show. If you enjoyed what you heard, feel free to subscribe and leave us a review. If you didn't enjoy what you heard, reach out to us. Let us know how we can make it better. This show is really about all of us, not just me and my guests, but how can we all make this world a little better? And if you'd like to connect with us in other ways, be sure to check out our Instagram account. And we also have a free Facebook community that participates in monthly get-togethers, and we work through challenges and have meaningful conversations about important topics, all in a space that is safe, supportive, and encouraging. So join us. And if you'd like to show us more support, you can check out our intentional apparel shop online, New World Intentions. You'll find t-shirts, hats, totes, all with positive messaging to help you move mindfully through your day and help create that new world normal. I am so inspired by Marjorie. What a true light in the world. I will definitely be including all of her social media links in the show notes so we can all show her some support and keep being inspired by her grit. We'll also want to stay updated on when that book is coming out. I mean, we might have just named it. I will also be including links for more information on Dr. Seligman, as well as a link to the VIA Institute so we can all find out what our strongest character strength is, or should I say superpower. Thanks again for listening, and please come back next week